I think the most important legal and regulatory risks that banks are facing over the next year really focuses on the risk to the consumer and the change in the way the regulatory agencies are expecting institutions to react to that. So the CFPB is a new agency. They're just coming to be, and their focus is solely on the consumer. This changes institutions' compliance programs, the way they've looked at compliance, or consumer compliance, on a regular basis. So we're going to need to look at data in a new way. We're going to need to look at our positions in a new way and the processes in a new way. It's very likely that practices and products and things that we've had in place for years that people consider to be industry practices or industry standards will need to shift and change, because we're going to be asking new questions, and people need to be prepared within institutions to adjust and change based on this kind of new thought process for how compliance really needs to be rolled out. Best practices I'd recommend around establishing a culture of compliance across the enterprise would be to focus on several key things. The first thing would be the senior executive board members as well as executive team, and saying that this is important. Compliance is important, how we treat our customers is important, it is important to our strategic plan, and being successful as an institution is a key component of what we do and who we are as an organization. That flows into the training and all of the information that you use to onboard new employees, as well as in the review processes. The next piece of it, of course, is making sure that those individuals that are doing their jobs on a day-to-day basis have the ability to kind of raise their hand and say, here's a potential risk to the organization. We may not be doing what we think we're doing, or this may be slightly outside of what we expect. And that then the support processes can come into place via compliance or risk management to help the business in kind of shoring those areas up and responding to that, so that the business and then ultimately the institution can be successful at the end of the day. That overall support from the top down to every employee with the support processes in place will help them be successful and establish that culture of compliance. As you kind of look at your overall compliance program and you're trying to shift to this new thought process, which is risk to the consumer or fairness to the consumer, we need to involve kind of our overall enterprise risk management structures. So we need to sit down and say, well, what is the impact to the consumer? And most institutions have a strategic plan process that says we want to be fair to the consumers, we want to offer the consumers X, Y, and Z. We need to tie that into our policies and procedures across the board through the institution. We then need to kind of get in and look at things like our ombudsman support and our complaint processes, and say, how are we using that information? If our consumers come in and they complain, whether through the call center or verbally in a branch, how do we get that information, and how do we use that information within our organization to ensure that what we're providing to the consumers is what they actually need and it benefits them at the end of the day? So those are some of the changes that you would need to make within the organization.